Welcome to another episode of Business Learning Lab, where me and Meredith share with you the many hard earned business lessons we have learned in our 50 plus years combined of being entrepreneurs. And our whole hope with this channel is to help someone avoid some of the pitfalls that are common in the entrepreneurial journey, and also to look back and laugh at our silly errors. So today we want to talk about the benefits of having a business partner, something that we've both had a both positive, very positive current experience with, but we've also had bad experiences with. So we just want to unpack the lessons we've learned along the way. Meredith, why did you want to talk about this topic today?
Well, because it's a great topic. I talk about it a lot. Anytime anyone asks, how it is that we can run multiple companies, my first answer is I have a business partner. That makes a huge difference. Also, just because I think there's a lot of lessons that people can learn, whether or not you want to have a business partner, whether or not you will ever have a business partner, but there's something to be said for, you can still take lessons. You can have, an unofficial partner or someone to bounce ideas off of, that kind of stuff. So I don't know, it's worth talking about. And also because anytime, we hear that someone had a bad experience at something that we have figured out how to do, I always want to go back and share. So it's hopefully erase or help them move forward into a better experience.
That's so true. Every time that it has come up in like a conversation with another business owner or in a group that I've been in over the years, since you and I formed our partnership, I have to say 100% of the time, people share either their negative experiences or their negative expectations of working with somebody full time. And although I often compare it to a marriage, when legally, Meredith, we are very bound together.
I think it would be more expensive and complicated for you and I to split up than for me and my husband to split up.
That very well might be true. That's a good point. But please, there are good marriages and there are marriages that fail, and it's the same thing with partnerships. And I think, although those bad experiences do exist, and if you pick the wrong partner, it can have really painful consequences. If you are thoughtful and intentional about choosing a business partner, and we're going to talk about give you some advice on what we think might be a good way to go about that. You can have, just such a positive experience with it. Meredith and I think, are thankful every day for our business partnership. Because of it, we've been able to buy another company. I couldn't have done that on my own. I just don't think I could have. I just would not have the mental resources to deal with all of that. I don't think we could have grown as quickly with either of our companies. Just sharing, having a collaboration and thought partner, also sharing and dividing the responsibilities so that we can each do the things that we are more naturally, drawn to within the spectrum of business responsibilities, has been, so rewarding to me. So we were unpacking our, how we came to be business partners prior to recording. And Meredith, you mentioned something that I thought was something we did not do intentionally, but I think is actually good advice for someone who is considering a business partner. So let's talk about that.
So we did not come together. We did not meet because we wanted to find business partners. We were introduced by a mutual friend to just be business friends, business besties, and we hit it off. We liked it, and then we ended up deciding to do a conference together. And that was really our first foray into what is it like to be partners. And we were just sort of taking it one step at a time. We found out we're fairly well aligned. We're both entrepreneurs, blah, blah, blah. Had this idea. We both have idea generator, machines. We never have a shortage of ideas. We settled in and we decided to do this conference. And I think, we decided to do the conference because we already had a sense that we could work well together. And then this, so we felt fairly confident taking that chance. And we learned a lot about what it was like to work together. And I think that would be advice we were saying we would give to someone else if they were thinking about getting a partner, or thinking about if they already knew someone, is go through your own contacts and see if there's anyone that you work well together, that you've done some events together or something. And I do think an event in particular, whether it's live or virtual, is a really good test of compatibility and style, because there's so much involved in an event.
I agree. I'm not only are there so many elements, it's almost like a condensed version of a business with a very hard deadline and very measurable results at the end. You use every single business skill, and you really need to rely on each other a lot to pull that whole thing off. So I do think that although we weren't like vetting each other as business partners at the time, it was a really good proving ground that we enjoyed working together, that, we each pulled our weight, we communicated well, we got along, even when things got stressful, like our temperaments just, gelled really well together. So, I recommend. What I don't recommend doing is what I did shortly before I met you, because we each had separate businesses. I had a very small, but, spunky little social media agency that I was trying to get off the ground. And at the time I thought, you know what, this would be easier with a partner. And so I cast a net. I think I put something out. It was either Facebook, or I'm so embarrassed, but it may have even been Craigslist.
Oh my gosh.
It may have been. And
I didn't know this story.
Looking back, I can't believe I did that. That's so dumb. But, whatever. I was maybe desperate. So I got a response from a young lady, and she seemed very nice and she was very enthusiastic. We met for coffee, and I was like, okay, let's do this. I mean, I was just like, I like you. Let's try it out. Like on a probationary period. No, we didn't sign any paperwork, anything. I was not willing to do that, but I was willing to give it a go. Well, keep in mind, this is a social media agency. Come to find out, a few weeks into getting to know her, she would not put her face on social media. Not anywhere, ever. Hard pass on that. And she wouldn't disclose to me why. And there are many reasons why she might not want to do that, right? As women, there may be reasons we want to keep our privacy. And we didn't have a relationship where she felt like she could tell me why, because we just met. And so, although I could respect that she did not want to put her face on social media, it was going to make our partnership, which is social media is very visible, it was going to make it so much harder. So we ended up, not being partners. Like, I'll just get to the chase there. So yeah, that could have scared me away from business partnerships for life. But I realized that I just didn't do a great job of vetting. It was really on me. She wasn't a horrible person. She could make someone else a great business partner, maybe in a different industry where visibility is not like a primary factor. But she wasn't the right business partner for me. It certainly wasn't a nightmare scenario, but it was a lesson. Definitely a lesson.
I had a similar thing before we met, where I had someone who I'd met in a somewhat professional capacity. We loved each other. We got along. We energized each other, and we sort of recognized right away that we were opposites. And we loved it. We thought that's so fun. And we decided to sort of start a brand. And first thing we decided to do was a course. And that, looking back, the day we sat down to start mapping the course was the day I should have known that this would never work. But I'm very optimistic. I was the same way when I was dating. I was like, we can make it work. We can make it work. So I wanted to start small, one module, see how it goes. She was like, no, we have to do 6. It has to be 6 modules. There's no other way to do it. Absolutely not. 6 modules. And I was like, well, seemed like, she was like, nope, have to do it. I was like, okie dokie. I went along with it. I didn't like it. So, and that was just, we barely finished the thing. It was really bad. And we tried to keep going. It was terrible. It was terrible. And we don't really have anything to say to each other anymore. And it was very different temperaments. She wasn't collaborative, right? She wanted to be collaborative. She wasn't. She was dominant in a way. But she believed herself to be collaborative, which was the problem. It's that lack of
That's a problem. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've talked about, the whole testing ground with like doing like a project together, collaboratively, see how well you work together. I think you do need to take it a step further. You have to really evaluate your strengths and weaknesses, as well as your business partner's strengths and weaknesses. Um, with Meredith and I, we got really fortunate that I feel like where I'm weak, Meredith is strong, and vice versa. So, and we have some similar strengths, for sure. But I think that tends to, work really well for us because we gravitate towards different responsibilities within the business.
Mhm.
And some of the things that I do that are important, Meredith just doesn't want to do. And some of the important things that Meredith does, I have no interest
Yeah.
in doing. And doing them would take a lot of the joy out of having a business. So I think that's important to really evaluate upfront, is to see, where you gravitate in business, where your strengths lie, make sure they complement as much as possible. And I do think temperament and personality is really important. Meredith and I happen to be pretty even keeled people. We don't have like, neither of us like have extreme anger, or we're not, neither of us are extremely emotional. So it's not that we're immune to stress, but when we have stress, we don't lose our shit.
Yeah.
Like we keep it together. And we're not emotional with each other. Like we're not screamers, we're not yellers, we're not criers. We can talk things out, we can reason things out.
Yeah.
And
I think we have
that's our personality. That's who we have to work with. That's that type of person, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one really key thing that I don't find very often, I do think, there's some things that are formula or objective, and there's things we just got really lucky on with each other. And I don't think you can plan for this, but it's a rare thing. But like, if there is a conflict, or if we have a different idea about something, or are very stressed or emotional, like we keep in mind what we already know about each other, if that makes sense. So we don't ever misunderstand. Like there's never a time where like I misread a text from you. It's like, oh my gosh, he's mad at me. Or like, oh my gosh, he's passive aggressive, because I just know you're not a passive aggressive person. We don't get mad at each other. Like we might get, I don't even know, but I'm sure at points we've been frustrated, or we've been like a little bit like perturbed at something's going on, but we're not like, but I've never like, oh my gosh, he hates me.
Yeah, no, I've never thought that. I've never thought, oh, she's yeah, never. That's so true. I think when you have to have that in, trust in each other, right? That really comes down to trust. I have to trust you as my business partner, the other half of my business. You have to have that trust, because you're right. Like if you don't text me back, I assume that you are busy and you'll get back to me later. I don't assume you're mad, you're ignoring me, you don't think what I'm texting is important. I never assume the worst. I always assume the best naturally, because I have that trust in you. And if we don't agree on something, I am so much more willing to come to your side of things, because I trust you. I trust you as a business person. I trust you as a friend and a partner. So I am so much more like willing to like, be convinced of your side, hopefully it goes both ways, but
yeah, absolutely.
It does.
I mean, at the beginning of this, when you said, why did you want to talk about this topic? What would have been the most honest answer is because you suggested it. So I was like, okay. Because like, yeah, why not? If you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
And I agree it's a good topic, but like, I didn't have to give it a lot of thought. I just trust you. And also at the same time, like there's been times on other times we've done Learning Lab where you're like, how about this topic? I'm like, done, because then I don't have to think about it. Like I'm not gonna redo work you've done. I'm not gonna second guess your work. I trust you, it's good. We have too much to do. Done. Moving on. Like,
yeah.
And that's another big part of it too, is that neither of us are micromanagers of each other or our staff or our contractors. Like we don't do that. Yeah. We're not real big into like work for work's sake. Like I'm not trying to redo anything you've already done. I'm not trying to like create extra work. So I think where a lot of people have conflicts in their partnerships is those kinds of things. Like, especially now that we're really in both companies pretty divided up on like your area, my areas of responsibility or focus, pretty quick to just be like, okay, cool. Like you did that. Sounds good.
And that makes it so much easier when you kind of, I don't know, organically, I understand like what I should be spending my time on, like as things come up. Like we were revamping, for example, we were revamping our the automations in our employee application process, and revamping our automations in our client nurturing process. And so part of that with the client side was, oh, we have to, like, we want to send out this client survey. So I sort of automatically knew that that was on my plate without having to be like, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it? Like, we didn't have to do that because I was like, oh yeah, it's client facing. I'm like the people-y side of things. That's automatically, I didn't even think about it. I was like, I just jumped on it. That was my, as my responsibility. And I don't know, that to me, that just knowing my place in the business and where my responsibilities fall, and I already automatically know like where Meredith is going to like tackle something like we had to update our employee manual and move forward virtual assistants because we're new owners and we wanted to update it and have it reflect the spirit of our business, of our core values and our principles. And so it had to be revamped. And so Meredith took the lead on that. Sure, I look it over, make some minor edits, but she took the lead on that because she's kind of in that, sort of in the HR side at times. Anyway, I hope that makes sense, like just how that naturally falls.
Yeah. And we're very conscious about too, like who we are as leaders, who we are as business people. It's a big part of how we run our companies. And so we're that way with ourselves too. We're very self-aware. We do spend a lot of time together. A big part of having a strong working relationship, whether it's a business partner or employee, is spending time together, knowing each other's lives, having a certain natural bond. And I think that's partly why also it's so easy to trust each other and not like read into or think like, oh, she's mad at me because she didn't respond, because we just know each other so well. We know so much about each other. I know what you're like with your husband. I'm like that is there. So that's a big part of it too. And I think also where partnerships go wrong is like either micromanaging each other, second guessing each other, or like thinking we need to be doing the same things. And then, we're pretty autopilot with like what's yours and what's mine at this point. It's been 5 years, right? At least.
Yeah, we've had time. Yeah.
So we figured it out. When we first started Spirit, we were doing like everything together because we were figuring it out. We're figuring each other out, we're figuring the work out. And then little by little, it was like, oh, we don't both need to be doing this because A, we don't have time. B, because this is not your skill set or this is not my skill. Like doing discovery calls.
Yeah.
I have an extremely limited capacity for talking to strangers in a day. And so we first started Spirit, it was like every day we're like discovery calls and Spirit interviews and this and that. And I was dying. I couldn't ever regenerate from it. And so at a certain point I was like, I don't need to be here.
We need to be there. And it was true. It was like, I think it was just, we were security blankets for each other at that point. And then, we have to like the whole benefit of having a business partner is that you can divide and conquer.
Yeah.
We were not dividing and conquering so well in the beginning. So again, we've learned a lot along the way.
And again, like you're saying, like if we have a disagreement, if we're in two different places, I think we're both really good at evaluating, is my objection really based in something that I'm going to fight over, or is it just a gut feeling? And if it's is this worth going to the mat for? And I think we're both pretty good at being like, I can tell this is you feel so strongly about this that if I keep fighting, it's going to really be an issue, or you're going to really be stressed and uncomfortable. And so I'll really evaluate in myself, do I feel strongly enough about my side to make this a thing? And if the answer is no, then I just hands off, walk away. Because also, let's say we do it your way and it doesn't go right, or vice versa. We do it my way and it doesn't turn out to be the best way. I know you're not going to be like, I told you so. It's just going to be like, okay, well, now here we are. We've learned a lesson. How do we move forward? And
I'm laughing because I couldn't even imagine like saying that to you. Like, oh, how would that would just be horrible. It would be horrible to have that type of conflict on a regular basis. So can you have bad business partnerships? Absolutely. But it can work out. And I think, we've been together long enough, 2 businesses now, to prove that that's possible. Hey, I spent the first, 30 years of my entrepreneurial journey as a lone ranger, doing everything the hard way, feeling like I had to do everything myself, shouldering all the responsibility, collaborating with myself inside my head. It is so much better and so worth the splitting of the profits to have a collaboration partner, and to have somebody that I can actually build a business faster, better, stronger with. Two brains are totally better than my one brain. So I could not do another business on my own after this experience. Absolutely. Being a solo business owner is in my rearview mirror at this point.
100%. Yeah. And the other piece we're kind of over time, but I'll just throw out is that we push each other to be better, to hold true to what we have stated and the authenticity of our companies. And we have these core values and we're very honest about them, but we check each other too, which I think is also part of being that kind of business. It's not just about a partnership, but it's about being true and authentic. And like, we can't cheat because we'll catch each other. We would have to both agree to cheat. And that's much harder to get someone else on board to cheat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's totally like recently I had like a really bad idea, and like, it was just like something that just popped into my head and I said it without thinking about it. And you were like, well, that's not true to our values. We can't do that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, I didn't put enough thought into that. So you're right. And that's like, keeping us on point. And, the other thing I really like, I'll just keep adding because I could talk about this forever, is that I think we're really good at monitoring each other's stress levels, or like just kind of like, like for instance, with, MFVA recently, I could tell like sort of the HR burden was getting heavier and heavier. And I was like, I could tell it was like stressing you out more and more. And I was like, to me, it does not benefit me to have a stressed out business partner. Like, I need someone who's like, that we can't have. I mean, it's okay to be stressed every once in a while. It's going to happen, but we can't have a chronic stress period for either of us. And so, I realized, hey, like, we need some HR help because, as co-CEO, like, you should not ultimately be the HR department. And so, luckily we had a client at Spirit with an HR company, and we were able to set up a consultation and look at some fractional HR services and get educated on our options. And so now it's like, we can both feel that relief coming of like, having a trusted partner to help with our HR needs that can provide us with a custom fit to the size of our business. And it's like, if I was on my own, like, I probably would have just been like, I'm stressed out, whatever, that's just life.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm probably more concerned with your stress than my own stress.
Well, what's interesting, and I'm just thinking about this now, because I was starting to reach my breaking point with that, but what it was different and what previous would not have happened, but like what I realized now in retrospect, I was not speaking up about it because I felt like I needed to just suck it up and get it done because we were in this growth model and I didn't think we had a lot of, the money to spare and blah, blah, blah. And because I felt like you were doing so much when it came to bringing in the clients and getting that money and getting all the stuff we needed to move us forward. And I was like, because that to me sounds horrible. Like, I would hate this. I couldn't spend my day the way you do with having all of these discovery calls. So I was like, who am I to complain about all this paperwork and all this stuff and like whatever, even though it was like slowly sucking my soul because I was spending like 10 hours a day on like these like maddening admin tasks, but I wasn't going to say anything, but you saw it and you came in and you like came up with a solution, which was so helpful and such a relief. And it was after the fact that I was like, yeah, I was like this close to like, but that wasn't fair of me, right? Like, in retrospect. And that's the first time I think I've ever done that. And it was just, I'm still learning how to have two companies. Like, this other company is.
Well, yeah, it's still very new. And yeah, and I think probably you wouldn't normally do that, but we had sort of, when we bought the company, we're like, okay, we're going to have 3 months where life is going to be a little rocky, and we're not going to be working our typical hours. We're going to, be putting a little bit of, sweat equity into this business the first 3 months during this acquisition. And so I think probably mentally we were like, okay, like, we're not going to complain for like this period of time, but we're really out of that period now. And like I said, it's like, I didn't think having you stressed like was the best use. And I didn't think it was the best use of your time either,
Yeah.
but also having a stressed business partner, like you can't bring your best to the table. I don't, I want to enjoy, and I want you to enjoy our businesses. To me, this is for the most part fun. I love what we do. I love running a business. I love growing a business. I love having a great team. I love having great clients. I'm excited to get out of bed and come to work every day. And I want my business partner to feel the same way. I mean, obviously we have bad days. Like there's, not every day is like, sunshine and ponies, but for the most part, I want us to really be happy with our work. And I was like, oh, like Meredith's just not a happy camper. And I was like, this is like, and I didn't see an end in sight. Like I felt like the HR lift was just there. We have the team that we have, it's growing. So it's only the HR burden was going to grow along with it. And I was like, we need to solve it now because we can't we can't be miserable in our business. That's just not how we do business.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And I appreciate that you sort of intervened when I wasn't even aware of how bad it was for me. But also that was another example of a learning curve. Another example, like we knew a lot about business. We went in, we did a lot of things right away, but we've not had W-2 employees before. And it's a wildly different. It's not just a little different. It is like so different. And I was not prepared for the level of HR that had to happen. And like, it's a whole thing. So there's a lot of things going on around that. But yeah, if I've said many times, and I think like neither of us are particularly emotional, but I'm probably more emotional of the two of us. I tend to get a little bit more like, riled up about stuff, not between us, just in general, like about life.
Yeah.
And so I think I would be more likely to just be like, if you disappeared somehow, I would just be like, I'm out. Like, it's over. Never mind. I'm done. I'm not doing all of that other stuff. Like, because the part I do can't exist without the part that you do, because you do the bringing the clients and the money and the people, and I just make it all work behind the scenes. Whereas I think if it were flipped, if I disappeared, I think you would have a better chance. You would at least give it a shot.
I don't know. I think I would die from 1,000 paper cuts. I mean, honestly,
you would at least give it a runway. You would like, let's just see what we could do. And I would just be like, the minute you're gone, I'm like, that's it. I'm out. Like, goodbye.
It would just be a slow, miserable death for me. Anyway, hopefully this has inspired you to explore getting a business partner, particularly if you are a very stressed business owner. Consider, sharing that stress with a business partner. Share the love. Let us know if you've had success with a business partner already, or if you've had a horror story about a business partner. If you need any, sage advice on where to look for a business partner, look at people you already get along with, you've already collaborated or worked together with on a project, volunteer work, anything like that. And then just keep digging deep, like we said, in terms of temperament and strengths and weaknesses. And definitely do not sign paperwork until you're confident. And we didn't even touch on this, but you need good paperwork. You need a really good partnership agreement. And you need to think about things like what happens if one of you gets hit by a bus kind of scenario. And we've had to work all of that out because our spouses are involved. We're both married. And so our business is an asset. The asset, if something happens to me, like we have like life insurance policies related to the business in case of these events. It's horrible, horrible scenarios to think through, but life is full of nasty surprises sometimes. So you have to kind of think all of those scenarios through to make sure that your business survives in the way that you want it to survive. If you don't, or if you decide to split, if you decide, one of you wants to buy each other out, you've got to think through all of that. So
yeah, it's so much better to go in with all of that set up than to worry about it later. And also just signing the papers, I think it made us both with that first company with Sparent to really be serious and to just, it elevates it mentally from just being like, hey, we're just doing a thing together. Let's see how it goes. Like, let's just try it, to like, okay, money has been invested. Like,
Yeah.
older people, we've signed contracts like we really have to make this happen.
Yeah,
So-
there's a big fancy legal words now attached to this endeavor, so it must be serious. No, that's a really good point, Meredith. Thank you all for joining us for another Business Learning Lab. Please feel free to make a comment, subscribe to the channel, suggest topics that you'd like to hear, and we would love to get your feedback. Thank you. Bye.